Good evening and welcome to the first Inside Government show for the spring 2019 semester here at QUILL Community College. This is a show that is brought to you by Time Warner, Verizon Fios, WIN 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have back in the studio, as we do at the beginning of each semester, Mayor Michael D. Quill, who was elected in November of 2007 and is starting his 12th year as the mayor of the city of Auburn. Among the issues that we'll discuss over the next half hour will be those revolving around the $10 million Downtown Revitalization Initiative, better known as the DRI, as well as recent financial projections for the city, the possible closure of the landfill, and we might even get in a re-election question in there at some point. Welcome back, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, nice to have you here, and we appreciate it at the college. You've been nice enough to be here for every beginning of the semester, and we like it. So
after me, it's all uphill, or
it's all uphill.
Downhill.
We'll see. A large part of your time, it seems, over the last 4 or 5 months has been on this Downtown Revitalization Initiative, better known as the DRI.
Correct.
For those who are living under a rock, what is it?
Basically, it's a competition by the governor for different sections of the state. The grand prize being $10 million to be used for downtown revitalization, rebuilding of downtown. And not specifically in Auburn, Genesee Street, whatever. There are certain boundaries that we are staying within. There's been requests for out of the boundaries, but we haven't moved the boundaries.
Are those boundaries you set or the state sets?
They are the boundaries basically that we set.
And so $10 million, and I know the governor, when he was at the Auburn Public Theater this summer, said there's some tiered prizes now in the future.
Right.
It didn't happen the first 2 rounds.
Well, we were the 3rd round, so that's okay. They can do anything they want.
So
now.
you had tried the first 2. You had different projects. They didn't.
Correct.
Oswego and
Cortland.
And so 3rd time the charm for Auburn. Where are you in the process right now?
We're very close to wrapping it up. We need to have our request into the state sometime in March. Excuse me.
So, not to be remedial here, but some people some organizations put projects in so that you could put them in the overall application that you submitted last year to the state.
Right, that's correct.
So those are in the pot, and then you did another round after the award was announced?
That's correct.
And how many came in for that one roughly? A handful?
Maybe a handful.
Okay.
Half again as many.
So those get submitted. This committee, which is made up of who?
There's myself, Tracy Verrier from
You're the
CETA.
chairs.
We're the co-chairs. We have Mr. Bartolotta. We have the president of the college here. There's a
so Brian Durant, Angela Dodabo with the Auburn Public Theater. Is Dia Carbajal, member of council. Jim Hutchinson, who's on your LDC. Community people.
Mr. Cutler from the East Hill Medical.
Okay.
So it's a widespread.
You then work with a consultant.
Correct.
And we should say the consultant you pay the consultant out of the $10 million.
That comes right off the top.
You don't necessarily pick the consultant, but you pick from a pool of consultants that
correct.
Albany gives you.
That's correct.
They then sift down your proposals to how many? Is it how many or how much?
The way we're working it is towards our end goal for submittal is somewhere between $12 and $13 million.
And so some of those projects will be in, some of those projects.
The state will have the final say in whittling down from 12 to 13 to 10 million.
So how often do you meet?
We meet at least once a month, and other times we've met more than once a month, depending on scheduling.
And these are all public meetings?
All wide open. We have one coming up next week, I believe, which will be at the Hilton Garden Inn. So it is open to
So give us some examples of some projects that are in there right now.
Part of it is the museum down on Washington, Genesee Street in that area, improving that area.
So there's a thought about not necessarily combining, but putting as a campus the QUILL Museum and the Schweinfurth.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. And the big question now is, can the neighborhood, they need new sidewalks. Can that be folded into it? We're waiting to hear on that. The public safety building, that's one of the requests.
So let's take that one for a second, because that one seems to be a high ticket item. There's been a proposal, long-standing proposal, maybe the last 5 or 6 years of getting rid of the Market Street Firehouse, not tearing it down,
No.
but moving it because unlike everything else in the world, as things in time get smaller and more compact, fire equipment gets heavier and bigger.
The building was built at approximately 1931-32, and it really wasn't meant for the fire equipment of today. It's just ridiculous.
So the thought is to build a new firehouse or new fire space on Seminary
Correct.
near Willard Chapel.
That is correct.
How much would that cost overall?
Oh, I don't have. I know. I believe the ask the DRI is about 1.2 million. There's 2 million that was through a grant was received through the state.
So the question comes up: why take DRI money versus going to taxpayers?
First of all, it's a large ticket item. It's very, very large.
This is going to be a and I'm just going to toss out a number.
Yeah.
Let's say it's $6 million. It's still a hefty number that you'd either have to bond for all together,
right?
And that is expensive over time.
My grandkids will be paying for it.
Okay.
They
still are going to pay for it one way or the other.
One way or another. But part of the thought too, and Jeff Dygert, our city manager, brought it up, this is really the only property that fronts on the river in the downtown area, the present fire station. So there's many different thoughts how to reuse it, how to repurpose it. I know the police department were interested in enlarging. There's talk of possibly a farmer's market. There's talks of condos in there. So that remains to be seen.
So it's also it's not only building a new facility, but it's also repurposing the current. There's also I saw the list or looked at the list. There's another roughly $600,000, which would be I think I'm saying it's a revolving fund, but it would be used for future projects.
That is correct. Just smaller projects that just a way. Hopefully a local committee will be in charge of the funds, working on the funds, and loaning out a person that needs remodeling, facelift for their buildings.
So is this a relatively structured process by Albany?
I believe so. I believe it's structured.
Any idea how much the consultants will cost you?
It's approximately six figures, around $100,000, which comes right off the very top of the award.
Do you have a favorite project so far?
I think they're all great projects. I really do. You know, they all mean something a little different to the city of Auburn, but it helps enhance Auburn.
So recently you had, and I think the council will be discussing it maybe possibly this week, your new comptroller did a 5-year projection of revenues and revenues to expenses. What's the outlook?
It's like everyone's home budget. You have certain things that you want, and then there are certain things you can afford, and it's a balancing act. But we insisted a few years back on an extended financial forecast.
So the gap, as I read it, was, and there was a chart that next year it's $500,000 and over into 2024 it grows to 1.8, and that's based on cost, whether it's labor agreements, energy costs, all the things that go up daily in life. Correct.
Correct.
And that $500,000, is that for this coming fiscal year 1920, or is it for 2021?
2021, I believe it is.
Okay, so because you're in the process, or Jeff Dygert is your city manager is in the process of starting
after the first of the year, he gets together with department heads, and the budget sheets are due in this week. Do we have to get back?
So, not that we've heard this 4,000 times in the last 20 years. There's two ways to do this. It's either grow revenues or cut costs. So your comptroller said there's usually 4 options you can do. One is to close the gap through sales tax. Currently 8%?
Yes.
What's any concerns about that?
What we're being led to believe in the forecast with the Heritage Center being downtown, the revitalization of downtown, sales tax are going up. Okay. So it's never going to go by leaps and bounds, but it's better than a deficit.
But closing a $500,000 or $1 million gap is a heavy nut.
Absolutely.
Raising property taxes is another option?
It's an option. It's not always a good option because we're all taxpayers, but
even doing a 2% tax, you're at a 2% tax cap, you'd have to go above that What does 2% get you roughly? Less than $100,000?
Yeah, good. You're better with figures than I am. So
I'm just making them up.
So, and I'm agreeing with you.
So you can then, another option is to raise city fees.
Correct. Which our comptroller said is we really need to take a strong look at raising fees.
And the other one that she outlined is that you could avoid taking on more debt.
Right. Right.
But there's a long-term cost to that, because the city found that out 20 years ago. When the bills come due for sewer and water, though those are different accounts, or landfill or whatever, there's a cost to doing
that. It all
that.
backs up and creates a problem.
So do you see the outlook for the next 4 years, whether you're on council or not, and we'll get to that by the end of the show? Do you see a combination thereof?
I believe it has to be a combination.
Because you can't cut your way out of this.
You know, we have employees. They need to live. They have their bills. We need equipment. We did get into that problem not too many years ago, where all our equipment was dying, getting old. People complain about our city workers driving around brand new vehicles, but with the older vehicles, we spent more time in the shop repairing them.
High maintenance.
Absolutely.
So one of the factors in all of this is state aid.
Mm-hmm.
If I read the news correctly, aid to cities like Auburn has relatively stayed flat.
That's correct.
Is that what's occurring in this current budget the governor's proposing?
That is correct.
And this is far beyond what was the mandate, which used to be revenue sharing,
right,
which the other governor, Cuomo, cut 20 plus years ago. Do you expect more money from Albany?
No. I believe you're talking about the AIM funding.
Right. Aid to municipalities.
Yeah. It has remained flat for many years. We've been working very hard. Some of our council members just returned from Albany to the Conference of Mayors talking about this. Everybody in the state is complaining, trying to get something done with this. And I believe the governor's digging his heels in that he's not changing his formula.
Because he has somewhat changed the dynamic for funding. He is about competitions and applications, and not checks based on a mathematical formula, unless you're school aid. Yeah. And Jeff Parazzolo will be here next week.
That's a different story.
And he's got his own complaints about that.
Well, you know, and also you're correct, but we have the arterial going through downtown Auburn. We receive a sum of money per square foot of it. And to the best of my knowledge, that has never increased since it was open in, 1973, 74, something like that. That's another thing cities are complaining about. It's a state-owned route, but we maintain it. We plow it, we sand it. We work with the state on repairs, but our reimbursement rate is far below what it actually costs us for preventative maintenance.
I know you. Don't want to get too far away from the state, but kind of combining the state and economic development. Speaking of Albany, last week Jeff Bezos and Amazon decided they're going to pull out of New York City. I know that doesn't have a lot to do with Auburn, New York, but they were going to create 25,000 jobs. Were you surprised that Amazon pulled out?
Yeah, I was. I don't know what it has to do with everything going on in Washington between two people butting heads, but I want to believe it's a business decision by Mr. Bezos.
Well, the company, I think in press releases, kind of indicated that it was because there was some local opposition came up. Were you surprised that the state didn't do more to take in the role of these, or was it post this election?
I can't be judgmental because I don't know what the state's involvement was or wasn't.
So part of the plan was $3 billion in tax subsidies for 25,000 jobs.
Right.
What do you think about something like that?
There was a business owner on TV today, on national TV, talking about communities are being taken advantage. A baseball team needs a new stadium or a new factory, and the taxpayers are footing the bill. Yes, they're creating 25,000 jobs, but does that ever come back? I don't have a clear-cut answer. I can argue either side of it.
Well, the city was faced with that in 1994 with Falcon Park.
Or Falcon Park.
Either Major League Baseball, which nobody has ever said that there's been a financially poor baseball owner said,
and things haven't changed.
Yeah,
Things haven't changed.
You can either build it or you lose your franchise.
Absolutely.
In that same vein, on the Amazon, congressional representatives John Katko and Anthony Brindisi have suggested to Amazon, and Amazon has said they're going to stick with Virginia, which is was landed by a Syracusan, Terry McAuliffe, who grew up in Syracuse, but they're not going to go anywhere else. But both Congressman Katko and Anthony Brindisi have said locate Amazon in this upper area of upstate corridor. Do we have the infrastructure? Forget whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. Do we have the infrastructure for something like that?
There again, it all depends on where it's built, but I'm sure if there was a real want and a real strong desire to Amazon or someone like that to get there, a lot of things can be done rather quickly. Look at the casino over there. There was really nothing there before. It's no comparison to Amazon, but if you really want something, it can be accomplished. And
then you can do additions there. Yeah. Speaking of Congressman Katko, 2 weeks ago here at the college, you and your wife were here for the 81 Forum,
yes.
The congressman, his listening event. I think it was the first one of 4 that he's doing. Whether the 81 gets rebuilt, goes to a community grid or a tunnel, do you have a preference?
I think I speak for myself and council in this regard. Our concern is keeping the roads coming from the south, going along Skinny Atlas and Owasco, Cuba Lakes. I'm very, very concerned about a spill into one of our lakes.
So you're more about an environmental versus,
absolutely,
say, Owasco and I know Ed Wagner, the supervisor out there, is very concerned about truck traffic. You're more worried that there might be an accident and something will spill into the lakes.
To me, they go hand in hand. Have more trucks traveling through the area with the possibility of something harming our lakes.
Has the city gone on record with the DOT to say what your position is at this stage?
No, I believe so.
And they kept mentioning this report that's coming out, which seems a little late. Do you have any idea when this report will come out?
One person at that meeting took the congressman to task that he's having a meeting without this paperwork from the state. How can you know, and the congressman he's on a fact-finding mission. He's trying to find out what's going on. It would have been nice if we had it, but I don't fault the congressman for not having it there.
Well, speaking on that subject, were you surprised he hasn't taken a position on this? Almost everybody else seems to have taken a position on whether they like the grid, the tunnel, or the raised system.
I think he wants to wait for everything to be together and then make his final decision. I would imagine.
So let's switch from infrastructure of roads and travel, but this will impact roads and travel. You also got a report last week on the landfill.
Yes, yes.
It looks like you have 2 years left, useful life left on the landfill.
That's correct.
So why should the city be believed now? Because since at least 1993, it's always 2 years.
Yeah. Well,
and I say that tongue-in-cheek, but we've continued to hear it's done, it's done, it's done.
I started attending council meetings religiously around 1995, and you're right. Mike Talbot is the boss down there, and Mike's a very conscientious, very intelligent, very knowledgeable man. He's worked very hard with our engineers, deciding what would be the best process. What should we do? Should we build another cell? Do we close the cell? Do we go with a weigh station, a transfer station, excuse me? And that seems to be the consensus from Mike, our consultants in council. That's the way we go.
So you're not looking at, and that's what's been the difference since 1995. You've built on new cells, or you've done additions, or you've asked for new permits, correct?
Correct.
So 2 years, you have 2 years useful life if what occurs?
If everything goes right.
So you have to. So you're already getting rid of commercial haulers. We
will be in the very, very near future.
Okay. And are you also not taking certain debris at some point?
It's all programmed out. It'll be done in phases. Early this year, or middle of this year, they will start the construction of the waste of the transfer station.
So will the transfer station, it was unclear in the Citizen article, is the transfer station going to be online before you close?
Yes.
Okay.
The way Mike described it, We still have some usable room at the current cell, but it's not going to be that easy just to continue to dump it. It's going to be a trade-off. Some of it will be going shipped out of the area, and some will be closing up the final
So
cell.
his goal is reducing waste by going in the landfill by about 50% over the next 2 years.
Yes.
And that
Yep.
is in part getting rid of the commercial haulers,
Correct.
stop taking some other solid waste, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So even if you close the landfill and you cap it, there are still going to be costs to the city. You have to monitor, you have to cap it.
Cap it. There's a whole lot of things that has to be done, which only makes sense, not wanting to pay the money, but it has to be done.
Do you have those funds available to do the capping? And you'll monitor for many, many years
Yes.
from now. Where will the transfer station go?
Basically, in the area, if you're familiar with the scale house, it would be right in that area. There's a couple different ideas where exactly it will go, but that's where it will be. And it will still be open to the general public. That if you live in the city, want to bring your trash down, that it will still take place.
Any idea how much this will cost?
I do, but I don't want to quote my memory.
I thought the citizen reported between $500,000 and $600,000. So is this? So trash will be. You're not getting out of the trash pickup business.
No, not at all.
So the city is still going to pick up everybody's trash as long as it's done, put out on the curb legally.
Correct.
It's going to be brought there, and then it will be transported out of the area.
That's correct.
And any idea where it will be transported?
Mike Talbot did mention possibly in the Rochester area. I don't know there, Waterloo or whatever. A lot depends on the rates and what they're going to charge us.
So I was interested about that because he said the farthest out he would go was most likely, I thought it was because of the cost calculation. He thought Rochester. Why not Seneca Meadows? That didn't pop up there.
Mike did the calculations. I don't know why. I was surprised myself when he said Rochester, whether it's the longevity of it or what they can take or not take. So I can't answer that.
Are there still steps that City Council will be involved in making some policy decisions regarding this, or approving? I'm assuming you're going to bond for the transfer station.
Right. Well, City Council will be involved all the way up, like with any project should be, all the way along. So we haven't signed off on any. I don't mean to interrupt you. We haven't signed off on anything. It's somewhat still proposed. It's very close, probably about 90%, but we still have the final say in the questions.
And is there any worry right now that there would be additional cost to taxpayers by once you close the landfill and you go to this transfer station that you might have to raise?
We may have to raise fees regardless of what we do. Whether most certainly, if we built a new cell, we would have to raise dramatically.
So you're at this point right now where you're through your second quarter of the fiscal year. You're going to do budget starting in late April, early May. What's on the council's agenda besides talking about things like finances and landfills for the next couple of weeks?
It's kind of a lull. And looking ahead at the agendas, there's not a whole lot going on because our city manager, department heads are tied up very heavily in budget preparation. There's always ongoing labor issues, nothing serious.
And you just redid a contract. What's in the police contract?
The police are losing personnel left and right. They're being lured away by other departments, better salaries. I hate to see anyone leave us because I think we have a great
You've had
person.
8 retirements, though, in the last couple of months.
On top of people that are just moving on. So,
does that mean that we have vacancies that we can't fill?
That I don't know where the list is at, the civil service list. Excuse me, but between when a person's hired, when they first take the exam, it could be a year down the road before they go through their physicals, all their testing, all their training, their FTO, the field training. So it's not someone hiring someone off the street today, and putting them in the vehicle.
So what does the new labor agreement do for you that helps you with recruitment?
It makes us more on a par with surrounding communities that are. I was talking to my son-in-law, he's a police officer in Onondaga County, and he said, not that I don't trust Chief Butler, but he said it's happening all across the state and probably the country. everyone's trying to jockey for
Well, you
better
get a
pay.
lot sucked up by the New York State Police.
I'm sorry?
New York State Police tend to hire
Yep.
because they pay a higher rate, and
Absolutely.
still
Which
one of
is-
the tougher jobs in the world.
Absolutely, but it's to us, in a funny way of looking at it, it's a compliment to us because we have the people, the men and women, that are the caliber to be a state police.
I don't want to let you out of the station, the studio, without asking you some political questions. 2019 is an election year.
Correct?
You're up, and 2 members of council.
That's correct.
Who's
Councilor Carbajal, Councilor Giannantino.
Have you decided whether you will seek a 4th term?
You
I got a viewer question.
You know, that's a great question.
It is.
Uh,
It only comes in by internet. Let me reword it then.
Sure.
When do you have to decide?
That's a little bit easier. Monday night, I believe it's Monday night.
This Monday.
This Monday coming up.
Okay.
Because of the early elections and so forth that's new in state law, the Democrat Party will be having a meeting trying to decide who wants to run, who's going to run, and it has to go through the party process. So
We'll hear an announcement then in the next 5 or 6 days.
I would certainly hope so, but that's the plan of action.
Well, so the whole process, we would wait until late May, early June.
Yeah.
So when can petitions go out?
It's my understanding they go out near the end of near the end of this month. So.
Okay, so it's going to be Girl Scouts knocking at your door and people trying to sell you candidates.
Answer for the Girl Scouts.
Answer. Do you think both Councilor Carbajal and Giannantino will run for re-election?
I certainly hope so, but I certainly don't have the authority to speak on their behalf.
All right.
So.
We do want to thank Auburn Mayor Michael D. Quill for joining us today for a city update. Hope you'll come back on. If you're not a candidate, we'll have you on to give us a budget update, but your plans are to adopt a budget by early June for the new fiscal year on July 1st?
Yes, it's basically mandated. It has to be in first of June, I believe it is. It has to be adopted. So.
A lot of rules and regulations nowadays to just get
rules
you
rules for everything.
Past everything. We want to thank you for being here as always, and we appreciate you always coming on at the beginning of each semester for us. We'll be back on Tuesday with a new Cuyahoga County Sheriff, Brian Chang, to give us an update on his new job, and next Thursday an update on foundation aid and school aid from Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeff Parazola. He and his staff are putting their budget together to be put before the voters in May, and they are also looking at what the state of New York will do for them. In the coming weeks, we'll have Cuyahoga County Administrator Justin Woods on for a county update, as well as discuss Cuyahoga County Economic Development Agency, CEDA as it's known. We'll have their Executive Director, Tracy Verrier, on to talk about what they're doing on the economic development front. You just heard from the mayor saying that she co-chairs the DRI committee with him, but they also have had some budget cuts from Cuyahoga County, and we'll talk about that as well. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your questions or thoughts for future guests to Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page. You can send your questions by email at cozguytho@aol.com, just like someone did about whether the mayor was seeking re-election. Or you can send them to Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. I want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night and have a great tomorrow.